Okay, things I did. So my sister has a tour of Benin that she gives people. I will present the information down here. It's Wawawa Diaspora. And so she took me on some of the areas where she takes people for the tour. So one of the first places we went was Hiiii, and it is a water village. So the folklore is that it was established in the 16th century when warriors were coming to steal people into slavery. So the folklore is that the water was considered sacred. So the chieftain of these tribes that created this town went on alligators' backs out to this area of the water and determined that this was a good place to relocate their village. So in Hiiii, there are these homes that are on stilts because they're above the water. They actually live over the water. And there are 20,000 people living above water in this lake village. It's amazing. So here's a little bit of footage of when we first arrived, and what you do is you take a boat tour of the village, and they have several little shops where you can shop. So my sister and I, we went and we took the tour, and it was beautiful. So like she was telling me, you know, some of the villagers don't like to be photographed, so I was trying to be respectful. So I don't have a lot of photographs of it, but I do have some that I'll share with you. And it was just beautiful. Like, I can't believe that it's been there so long. And of course, these people are fishermen, so that is their livelihood. They all have their own boats, and they bring the fish to shore and they go sell it at the market, and that's their livelihood. But I thought it was amazing, and it shows the strength of these people that they survived. No one from their village was taken into slavery. So there was a reason why they did it, and they were successful, and they thrive to this day in this city. And Hiiii is considered the Venice of Africa, and it is the largest lake village or water village in Africa, the whole continent. So it's pretty amazing. We also took a trip to a place called Hiiii, which is one of the shorelines where the boats would come in to pick up the slaves that were leaving Benin. And I have to say that that was the most emotional part of my trip, to see this, what seemed to be this beautiful beach. But it was haunting because you know what happened there. And even the trip down, which we took on Zims, it was miles and miles to get to the shore. And you're thinking about your ancestors walking down this path. A friend of my sister's was telling her about a trip that he took to Nigeria. And he went to this museum where, you know, they talked about the enslavers and how things happened and the arrangements that were made and what they did to the people prior to getting them on the boats. And one of the most poignant things that he said was that specifically there in Nigeria, they had an actual Nigerian who was selling other Nigerians to these enslavers, and his ships of slaves were known to be docile. So the slaves were made to walk down this long path in chains in the heat, and prior to boarding the ships they would go into this hut that had a well. The well walls had an incantation or passage written on it in Yoruba, and prior to drinking the water from the well, they had to recite this passage. The loose translation of this passage was, "I will leave this place or this land never to return. I will obey my masters once I arrive to the land where I am taken, and the land where I am taken will become my land." So after that, they were given some water from this well. Well, this well was laced with a drug that would make these people semi-conscious. So number one, there was no rebellions because they're semi-conscious. They're not going to be fighting you. You could also do with them whatever you pleased. So it was very disturbing, and going to Hiiii with this in my mind, when I was there, I felt felt this weight on my shoulders. I really did. And I wasn't expecting it. We went and had lunch, sat and had lunch at a restaurant right next to an actual memorial that they have there at Hiiii. And so while we were sitting there, it was nice, but when we walked over to where the memorial was, I don't know, I just felt this weight. And it's an art passageway to where the boats would have been, right? So as I was standing there, and you can see in my photographs, I was just saddened. I felt a weight on me. And then as we were leaving, I remembered one of the things that my sister's friend, when he was talking about his trip to Nigeria, mentioned, and it really resonated with me, was that irrespective of how my journey and my family's journey, I was there. My feet were planted on that ground that my ancestors had to recite a passage, an incantation, to say that they were never to return. Well, I returned, and so has my sister, and we are representing our family. So we returned, although you made us say we would never return. We have returned on behalf of our ancestors, and I felt empowered after that. You know, like that weight that I was feeling and that sadness really was lifted, and I felt empowered. And so I felt like, you know what? Yeah, I'm back. I'm here. And so regardless of what you think you did, and the pain that you did inflict on my ancestors, I'm here, and I am a reflection of them, and you did not break us. So yeah, that was pretty powerful, and that just made the whole trip for me. So on a positive note, we were able to also go to Togo, which is also part of West Africa, right next to Benin, and we went to Cocoa Beach and had an amazing time, very relaxing. It was beautiful because the breeze from the beach was just so relaxing, and it really took that chip and that element off of the heat that we needed. We spent a 4-day weekend there, and it was amazing. This was our view at breakfast. Amazing. And we had little visitors here and there, little lizards everywhere, but that's, you know, all of Africa. Really had a great time there. Loved it, would suggest it. And another thing I'll mention is that Togo is trying to increase tourism. So they're offering a free 1-year visa to their country. So while I was there, I got the 1-year visa, small fee, just have to go take a photo for the visa. And I have that included. So if I want to go back within this year, I already have a visa to go back. And I could go directly there. Now they have flights directly from New Jersey to Togo, in case you're interested. So, you know, it's doable. While I was there, I also got to visit my sister's school while they were in session. Because like I said, I went for 2 weeks, but they were only out for a week. And I got to meet her students and hang out. We had a blast. Love you guys. Had a blast with you.
Girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Coming down for my lead. I'm even crazy, don't mind me. Say, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Coming down for my lead. Coming down for my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. Push and pull like a magnet too. What my heart is falling to. I'm in love with your body. Last night you were in my room, and then my bed sheets smell like you. Every day is going something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Oh, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Oh, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Oh, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why.
I mentioned that I'd have some tips, and specifically if you're going to the Benin or Togo area, I went specifically to Cotonou. These are helpful tips that you'll need to know. So in advance, obviously, make sure your passport is updated. My passport would have expired while I was on my trip, so obviously I had to get it renewed, and it was taking a while. So it kind of backed everything up for me to get my visa, but keep that in mind. Make sure your passport is up to date. Check to see if the country you're going to requires a visa. So Benin required a visa, so I had to go to the embassy here in DC and apply for a visa. You can look it up online, all the fees are listed, and you have to bring your passport as well. The other thing you need to have before you go get your visa for some countries, specifically for Benin, is your yellow fever shot vaccination. So you had to have proof that you had that, which segues into the next point of vaccinations. Really important that you know this. For this trip to West Africa, the only thing that the government required was a yellow fever shot. Once I went to get that vaccination, the other thing to mention too is that it's not covered most likely by your health insurance. So I realized that you only are covered for vaccinations that are needed in this country. So understand that this will be an expense for you. So the yellow fever shot alone the actual shot cost about $200, and then the doctor's visit costed an additional $70. So that was almost $300 just for that one shot. None of this, again, was covered by my insurance, but check with your insurance, you might be lucky. The other thing that I found out was once I went for my vaccination, that although you are only required to get one vaccination, it is suggested that you get several, depending on what region you're going to. So I needed, in addition to what I was getting, a recent tetanus shot, and I believe it's within the last 5 years, and my last tetanus shot was like 8 years ago, so I needed a tetanus shot. I needed typhoid fever, I believe, meningococcal. There was a whole list. To be honest, I wanted to err on the side of caution, so I went ahead and got pretty much every vaccination that was suggested, and it cost me an additional $500. So when you're planning the trip, keep in mind that although you are not required to take these vaccinations, it's a good idea. Like one that is not required but is a great idea to get is malaria vaccination. So I erred on the side of caution and I got every vaccination that was suggested. I have never been to Africa, the continent. I've never been to this region, obviously, and I didn't know what my body could and could not handle. Mosquitoes tend to love me anyway, so the malaria vaccination was a definite, and really everything else. So keep in mind when you're planning and budgeting for a trip to West Africa or any part of Africa that the vaccinations may be an additional expense that you weren't expecting, especially because you need most likely more vaccinations than are required. You should definitely download WhatsApp. I don't have international service on my phone. I didn't want to pay the additional fee to have international service while I was there. So WhatsApp made it possible for me to text and make phone calls to my family that was still here to let them know I made it safely, you know, send some pictures here and there, and to communicate. Of course, I only could use it while I was in Wi-Fi, and that is the next point, is Wi-Fi. Keep in mind that Africa, there's a lot of hacking. There's a lot of hacking here in America too, but there you're on a lot of unsecured networks. So do not connect to an unsecured network, one that's unfamiliar to you. While I was there, I only connected at my sister's home and at her job at the school. That was it. I mentioned before I left, one of the reasons that I went to Benin specifically, or that region, is because that is where it is well known that a lot of the slaves that were taken to Hispaniola, the island that is now both the Dominican Republic and Haiti, came from that region. So that is where I knew my ancestors to come from, so that was the first place I wanted to plant my feet when I went to Africa. So when I came back, I did my ancestry because I had been meaning to do that for years and had been procrastinating, and so I did it when I came back. And the results were pretty interesting. So I'll share them with you here. Only 2% of my lineage comes from Benin and Togo. That was really surprising. I am more Ivory Coast, Ghana, which was one of the places where my plane stopped, in Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, and Nigerian. So It's funny because while I was there, I talked to Florine a lot about different areas of Africa that she's lived in and visited as an artist. And so she's lived in Ghana, South Africa, all those places. So Nigeria. So she was telling me all about it, and they were very close to Benin. So I definitely plan on going back and making those countries part of my bucket list. I've already been to Benin, and some of my ancestry comes from there, so it's not like it was a missed trip. I still feel like so incredibly blessed that I was able to go and represent my family, as I said, and it was an amazing trip. Now, I did get sick while I was there, and I don't know if this was just the way my body responded to the heat, but I was severely dehydrated when I came back. The last 5 days I was there, I couldn't really keep anything down, including water. So I ended up in the emergency room a day after I came back. And just to give you an idea of how much sweating I did and how hot it was, in those 2 weeks that I was there, on the scale, I lost 15 pounds in those 2 weeks. Which obviously I quickly gained right back when I got home, once I got rehydrated. But that's how much sweating and like pouring my body was doing while I was in Africa. It was super hot, and then after I left, they went into their wet season. So that's when it's cold, like when it's usually hot here in the summertime, right after spring for them, which is, spring is their hot season. So yeah, I survived, I made it. And I'm super happy that I went. I can't wait to go back. I want to have so many more experiences in Africa, in different parts of Africa. So I will definitely let you know when I'm planning another trip to Africa. And if you guys have any questions that I didn't cover in this video, please feel free to ask below. And as always, even when you don't see my face, I will always be responding. And I promise next time, because I didn't do it this time, my hair is crinkled. I've got it kind of off to a little side pony. I will do a length check and do a little hair update for you next video, okay? So thank you for all your well wishes prior to my trip and all of them after I came back, and for just even checking in on me in general. So I love you guys as always. I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.